So I'm Vijayta, I'm the lead developer at Apsona. And today we're going to be talking about Apsona Grids, which is our newest offering. It's right over here, and it's so spreadsheet-like editing for multiple objects. So it's similar to an Apsona tabular view, and you can put in fields from multiple objects, whether they're related or unrelated, into a single view. And so the idea is it's faster that way to keep your data clean. Say if you're like a sales rep who's like trying to update data in real time, or say for nonprofits, if you're trying to keep fundraising or donation information together, or like for universities, updating enrollment or attendance records. It helps you just keep your data clean. And basically anytime where you want real-time or fast updating of your data, that grids will really help you. So a little bit about Apsona. We've been on App Exchange since 2011, so 11 years or so now. We have almost 2,000 customers, more than 10,000 users. We have almost 300 App Exchange reviews and very good ratings on App Exchange. We support all data models, so NPSP and AffinaQuest are common, but any data model is supported. And we have some pretty large customers, some large nonprofits, some universities, and then some for-profits as well. So some of the features and benefits of Apsona are that all the code is browser native. And so because of that, everything runs really fast in your browser. And since everything is just done in your browser, the data is never actually going to leave your org. So everything is very secure and then very fast that way too. And so today we're going to be talking about Apsona Grids. So before we start, just some notes. The recording for this webinar is going to be uploaded to the YouTube channel after this. And then if we don't get to any questions from the Q&A, we'll post the remaining answers for those into the Apsona Trailblazer group. And so today the agenda is that we'll first kind of go over an end user perspective of grids. So I'm going to use the example of a sales representative. And then I'll take some Q&A after that. For the end user perspective, I'll show how to build out a grid and then do some Q&A on that. And then show deployment of the grids, and then again, some Q&A. So pricing, we're going to start with $9.60 per year for 10 users, which works out to $8 a user per month for for-profits, and then $7.20 a year for 10 users for nonprofits. And so you need the base 3 Apsona for Salesforce licenses, and then the grids licenses go on top of that. These prices are the lowest on the market that we've seen so far. And a big part of the reason we want to do that is so that we get your guys' feedback on what either features you think we need to build out or what things you think we might need to change, all of that. And so, yeah, so I'll get started here. So let's imagine that I'm a sales rep on a sales team and I own this account. Let's start on this details tab. So if I need to update the opportunity information related to this account, and I also need to say check in on cases to make sure that everything is moving smoothly for this account and everyone's generally happy. So if I'm on this account detail page in Salesforce, I see a ton of fields over here. Some of these may not apply to me at all. Maybe I don't need to make any edits to these. And then I go down over here and I can see some of the related objects. I see contacts and opportunities, cases. The only thing is though, I can only see like 10 of them at a time. And so if I say needed to update a case that's not in this first list of 10, I would have to go into this view all. And then maybe here I can update if the record type isn't standard across all cases, then I would have to potentially go into the actual case record and then find the information I need and make the edit there. Same thing goes for opportunities and any of these related records. So again, so if I'm like a sales rep and I just want to update like opportunities and cases, it'd be nice to have like one view where I can update all of it. So that's where the benefits of grids come in. So with grids, you can see fields from multiple objects within the same grid. You can do subgrids or you can do multiple grids like this. So you'll notice here, I can see like open opportunities, closed opportunities, contacts, cases. All of those are directly related to the account. You can also see payments, which is not actually directly related to the account. What this will show here is any payments that are related to any opportunities that are in turn related to the account. So it's basically kind of like 2 levels down that you can go to and see information for. So after looking around at these grids, as a sales rep, I'm like, I want to update my opportunities first. And so I'll go over to this open opportunities and then try to make the updates I need. And so the first thing I notice here is this conditional formatting. I see this close date over here, and I notice that this is actually overdue. So I'm like, okay, actually for this opportunity, I know we lost the opportunity, say, and I can just click here and then change it to lost. And then I click save. And so the record immediately disappears from this grid, and that's because this grid is just for open opportunities. But if I go here to closed opportunities, then I see the record over here. And then say I go back to open opportunities and I'm like, okay, so now I've cleaned out the record that I forgot to update. And then I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh, actually, I just own 2 opportunities. Why do I have 3 here? So when I look at this, I see that these 2 have the same name and have same account, same stage, same close date. The next step is missing for one, and then the amount is off for one of these. So I know that the amount should actually be this 675,000. So what I want to do is just delete this opportunity. So I can click here and say Tools, Delete Checked, and then just say OK. And then the grid automatically refreshes with just the 2 opportunities that I do actually need to update. So I look over here and there's 2 different things. So one, this next step is like highlighted. And that's to indicate that, maybe I talked to my boss about it and they're like, you really need to add next steps for all of these opportunities. So I'm going to say something like the next step is to contact customer for feedback. And I can just click out, again, click save. And then the formatting immediately changes since the next step is no longer empty. And then, so let's say here that for this opportunity, I actually met someone recently at a conference and they're a key influencer for this opportunity. So what I want to do is add an opportunity contact role. And so normally what I would have to do is click into this opportunity, go to the opportunity contact roles off of the record. In this case, we actually have these subgrids right over here. And so this shows me all of the tasks that are related to this particular opportunity, all of the opportunity contact roles related to this opportunity, and then all of the products. These are opportunity products. And so I can just add a role in line right here. I can say like the contact that I met, his name is Chris. His role, he's an influencer. And I just click save. Say I also am like, I need to contact the APAC sales team for both of these opportunities. So I can click both of these, and then I can just do a mass add tasks up here in tools. And I can say, contact APAC sales team, keep it assigned to myself. And if I click proceed, and then I'll click refresh right here. And then you see that the tasks have been created, one here and then one over here for both of these records. So now I've been able to close one opportunity. I removed a second one that was a duplicate, and I updated the information on the opportunities that I actually own. And I added information for things that are related to the opportunities that I own. So I've cleaned up my opportunities section. And so now say I want to look at cases to see if, everyone is happy on this account or if there's anything that I need to address. So I come over here and I'm like, oh, okay, this is actually a lot of cases, like 11 different cases. Do these even all apply to me? And so I can select this filter over here that my admin set up to just filter for cases assigned to sales teams. So I filter over here, and this cuts down the cases that I'm looking at to just things that are associated with my team. And I see these two that are escalated. And so I go over here and I read the subject and I'm like, well, actually, I talked to my boss about both of these. Both of these I can close out. And so I can just select both of these here and then go tools and then update checked. And then I can say I want the status to be updated to closed. And then I'll click apply. And then here I can either choose to undo one of these, or I can just leave it as is if I know that both of these do need to be closed. And then I would just click save. So now all my information is up to date as a sales rep. I can also take a look at, say, contacts related to this account. I can take a look at payments related to this account. I can filter the data here on my own and just say what's not written off. I can also clear this out and I can sort the data here. So basically I have this 360-degree view of all of the data that I need. I can pretty easily find what I want to update. I can make all of my edits in line. So any data related to this object, I can easily access it and update it. So that's the end user perspective for how grids can be useful. Barbara, are there any questions so far? It looks like nothing really.
Yeah, I don't have any questions yet.
Okay. So I'll cover the admin perspective now for how you'd build out grids and deploy them. So one thing to note here is that this is actually a Lightning component. And so you can actually filter it for visibility based on what you need. So for example, if only people with certain profiles should see it, then you can filter it out that way. Yeah. So this next section of the admin work, I'm going to show how to build out a basic grid. And then the documentation for the complete building process is online, and some of the features that I may not cover here are on the website. So for building out a grid like this, so you'll notice over here, I have this Apsona Grid Admin tab. It comes with the Grids App Exchange package. So I'll open it out over here and just close this tab. And so the Apsona Grid Admin page is where you're going to create and manage your grids. The UI is very similar to the console view of a regular object page in Apsona. So you have this list on the left here. You have details about the grid on the right. You can edit, you can clone. You have tools up here. You have settings so that you can clear cache. So as in Apsona, if you add new objects or fields that you want to be available for grids, you would clear cache here. And then you can also create new grids over here. So one thing I wanted to point out before we actually start creating a new grid is that you can create grids on any standard or custom object. So here I have many grids on standard objects, but this one is also like a custom object that I created. And you can create a grid pretty easily on that also. So let's get into creating the new grid. I'm going to click this new button at the top. And the first thing I see is this thing to select the grid object as well as give the grid like a name. So say I'm like, I just want, like a basic grid for now. I'm still just kind of looking around at it. I'm going to do it on the account object. And for now, I'll just say it's on all accounts. I try to click save, but it prompts me to select some fields for the grid. So let's start with account ID, name, phone. And I continue looking. I want to add, in this case, let's say I want to add the number of locations. I keep looking down more, keep going down, and I see that there are these other objects too. So these are fields from any of the parent objects. So any parent object fields you can add to this grid as well. And so let's say we're on primary contact and I'm like looking around and I'm like, I think I want to add the primary contact email. So I click that and then all of these are selected in my grid. And then I just click save changes. So at this point, I see my grid up here and I'm like, okay, like now I've created something. The first thing I'd probably want to do is view it and see what it might look like to end users when I deploy it. So I would click this direct link to do that. And so I see, oh, oops, sorry about that. I clicked the wrong one. So I clicked the direct link for this. And then I see all of the fields I had selected: account ID, name, phone, number of locations, and then email. So this is, as you can already see, like similar to an Apsona tabular view. I can filter here by standard number of locations. I can group if I want to, say by like account phone. I can sort these fields. And then I also see over here that I have this like a summary data for number fields. So say I'm like looking over here and I'm like, okay, all of this looks interesting, but really the email field shouldn't just say email over here, because this is actually a primary contact email. It's not actually an email that's associated with the account itself. So there's a pretty simple way to edit that with Apsona. I can go back over here to grid admin and then click edit on the same grid. I go over to fields, and then if I hover over this email section, I see this little edit icon, and I can edit it, and then just change this to primary contact email. Then I save changes, and I can reload this direct link. And then now I see that the label got updated to primary contact label, which is what I want all my end users to see this as. So this is a good starting point, but let's say I want something closer to something to mimic what this is. Like this one was filtering by open opportunities. Maybe in this case, I'm like, I want to just show active accounts. And so I can go back to grid admin, click edit, and then in default filter, I can add a filter. So again, this is similar to Apsona filters. And I can just say here, I want only fields where active is yes. I click save changes. And then I reload this grid link. And so now I see that the number of accounts I have significantly cut down. I guess I only have actually 10 active accounts in my org. So this is good. I would prefer to just see active accounts. I want to give my users another filter here, similar to what I had over here with cases. Let's say I'm like looking over here and I'm like, I want to filter or allow my users to filter for accounts with locations more than 100. So if I go back to Apsona grid admin again, I can click edit here, go to additional filters, and then say create new. And then I can say locations more than 100. And then I'll add a term here, and I'll say number of locations. And then I can say greater than 100. And then save it. And again, if I reload the accounts view over here, I can select the filter now to say like only show me locations more than 100, accounts with locations more than 100. And then I can deselect it as well. So this is closer to what one of these grids would look like. There's a few more things. So one thing is like this coloring. How do we add this coloring? So say I'm looking at this and I'm like, I want to highlight things, gas companies. So anything with the word gas in it, I'm going to say is a gas company, and I want those things to be highlighted. So if I go back to Apsona grid admin, click edit on the same grid, and I go over to format rules, then I can just click add rule to add a new rule. And I'm going to say, I want gas companies to be the rule name. I'm going to do it on the account name. And I'm going to say, does it contain the word gas in it? And so you see that there are a few more options over here. You can select different text colors for either the cell, or in this case, you can also just apply it to the whole row. You can select a cell color, which is what we saw over here. You can also select like a font styling, so bold or italics, underline. So say I'm going to click apply to row just to kind of check this out. I'm going to change the text color to be pink, say, and I'm going to change the cell color to be this like wheatish kind of color over here. And then just to check it out, I also want to bold this. So I bold it, I click save rule, and then save changes. And then over here in the direct link, I reload it again. And then I see over here that the gas companies are all highlighted the way I wanted. So this looks good. Then there's a few more things we might want to do for end users. Maybe we're like, okay, like this tools bar earlier was pretty cool, but we don't actually want them to have all this functionality. We don't really want them to be able to do mass updates. We for sure don't want them to do mass deletes. And then we probably don't want them to do mass add tasks either. So you can actually configure this menu to cut down the number of tools. So if I go over here, back to Apsona Grid Admin, and I edit this, in the options tab, I can just remove all of these mass add tasks, mass delete, mass update. I do that, I save changes. And then I reload again in the direct link. And then if I go to tools now, the only thing you can do is export. So this is most of what we want. But when we were looking at this grid over here, this open opportunities one thing that was interesting to us was these subgrids, because we're like, we want people to be able to go multiple levels down. If they can see, say, like task related information, then that's really valuable for them. So maybe we want to add like a task subgrid to this grid that we just created. So we go back to Apsona Grid Admin, click edit, and then on the side, there's this subgrid information. So you can click add subgrid, and let's just name it tasks since we want to add tasks. So it asks you over here what object you want to create the subgrid for. And let's say over here, we select task. Then let's keep the lookup field as like the what ID field. And then we go into fields. And then over here, we can select a few different fields. So let's say I'll select subject, I'll select status, and I'll select, let's see, where was due date? So I do that, I click save changes. And then over here, if I reload this, I now have those little arrow drop downs that I had earlier. And so I can see all of the tasks that are related to this particular account. So most of these don't have any tasks. This one has some tasks. And then, like I was showing earlier, you can add row here, you can edit inline, all of that. So that's how you would configure like one basic grid. So I'll pause again for any questions. I see that there's one.
Yes. Do you want me to read it out to you, Vijayka?
I'm just reading it right now. So how many level objects can you go down in one grid, as in parent, child, grandchild? So if you mean with subgrids, you can only go one level down with subgrids, but you can configure like a subgrid here. So for example, here, if I could have put the payments object down here, because it's a child of opportunities. I can also put the payments object out here since it's only 2 steps from account. So here too, you could have configured like a subgrid, and so you can go like 3 levels down that way. Yeah.
And then we also had someone having an idea of how that they could use it for specific gift entries, like making a gift entry grid, and then being able to add opportunities, but also related event registration and maybe adding guest records to it as well. I thought that was a good idea.
I think that should be possible. And I guess it depends on the particular data model. I'm not as familiar with that, but it sounds like it should be possible, and like, yeah, it would be pretty useful. So otherwise looks like we're good on questions. So I'll continue a little bit more and just talk about deployment. So we have this grid here that's in this related list page, right? And what we have over here is like one single grid. So say what we want is to really like combine multiple grids into a single view, which is something like what we have over here. So there's 2 options for that. One is a top level page, which is not what's shown here, but it's basically like a Visualforce page that you can put into a tab. So it would end up looking something like this Apsona Grid Admin page. You would have different grids over here. So I can show that right now. And that's the one where you can have unrelated objects together. So if I say I want to add like accounts and then some sort of custom object that's completely unrelated over here. So I would go to tools and then create VF page and then top level page. And so let's say I'm going to label it just like demo. And then for the grid here, I'm going to say I want my accounts grid. And you can give it a different tab name if you want. And so let's just say I want to call it demo accounts. And then I can add another grid and say I want to put in my custom object grid. And then the tab name would just be, let me just say like custom objects. So I click create. And then I can click go to page. And so this is what the Visualforce page would look like. You have both of your grids here that have completely unrelated data. And you can add a tab that contains this Visualforce page. And then you can add that tab to either your navbar or to other users' navbars. So they have access to data from, maybe you want all data related to accounts for them, but you also want some completely unrelated object. And that object's data, maybe they have like multiple functions in the company, and so they need to have access to multiple types of data. This is a good way to do that. But say, you're like, okay, this is one aspect, but what I really wanted to do was create something like this. So if you want to create like a lightning component like this, you have to use the related list page option. And in this case, you have to use related objects, basically. So like objects that are related to account in some way, since what we want is we want grid information to be filtered by whatever is related to whatever record that you put it on. So over here in Apsona Grid Admin, so let me select some things that are related. So say I want to do something kind of similar to what's done on this account record, and I want to put in some opportunity data, some contact data, some payment data. So I go back to Apsona Grid Admin, and you actually don't need to select these here. But so I go to tools and then create VF page and then related list page. And then I'm going to give it some sort of name. Maybe I'll just say related lists of accounts. And then I tab, and then this page name autofills. And I say over here, I want this to be related list of account. And then here, I'm going to say I want some opportunity information, say open opportunities, and then I'll call it whatever I want. And then in the lookup field, I specify what the lookup is from the object on the grid to the related list object. So in this case, it's just account. I can add, say, contacts the same way. I have some previously made contact grid that I'm going to put in. And then the lookup field is again accounts. And I can add one more thing over here and say I want to add payments now. So I'm going to say I have that NPSP data model here, so I'm going to use the NPSP payments. I'm going to just call it pay me. And then under lookup field, so now these options show that this is kind of two levels of lookups. So payments are related through opportunity to account, and so we would want to pick this one. But you can also pick other lookups depending on what your data model needs are. So I do this, and then I click create. And so now I can go into this Visualforce page again. And so what you'll notice here is this is kind of different than what we saw on this page. This page has way fewer records. And that's because this is not on a record detail page yet. So it's not actually filtered by any specific record yet. But so what I need to do to add this into, now I want to put this into a lightning component. I need to know the Visualforce page name. So you can either find that in your Salesforce setup and be like, what was recently created? And Apsona Grids uses this prefix APG for all of the Visualforce pages it creates. But you can also, this is the page name itself in the URL. And so you can just copy that from right here. And so say I'm like, let me just go ahead and add this to the same account page just to kind of test it out. I'm on this page and I go to this, the gear icon, and then I say edit page. Then I'm going to go down here and I'll go to this grid section. And then over here, you see this Apsona grid component. So that's a component that comes with the Apsona grids package. And so I'm going to drag it over here. And then it prompts me for two things. So one is the Visualforce page name that we talked about, and then one is the height of the component. So here I'm just going to paste in what I had already copied from the URL. And then I'm going to say the height of this is like, maybe I just want it to be small for now. So I'll say like 300 pixels. And then I click save. And then if I go back, and then go to grids again, then now I have this Visualforce page that I just created with all of the grids that I want. Yeah, so that's how you would create and deploy. So a few more notes about this. So I'm logged in as an admin right now, and that's why I have access to, say, Apsona Grid Admin. I have access to all of these different, Visualforce pages that I'm creating. But if you're trying to assign this to end users, then you probably don't want them to actually have access to all of these pages. You wouldn't really want them to have access to this Apsona Grid Admin tab. And you probably, as far as Visualforce pages, you just want them to have access to Visualforce pages and grids that pertain to them. So you can hide the Apsona Grid Admin tab just normally through like Salesforce admin stuff. And then for the Visualforce pages, when they're each created, only sysadmins have access to them. So you actually need to give access to each of the users who you want to use the page. And you would do that by like Salesforce profile. So you can go to setup here and then search for Visualforce pages. And then you see the ones that were just created. And so say I'm looking at this one was the top level page we created, and I click security. And then over here, I'm like, I want to add, in my case, I have this sample grids profile, and then I want to add this one so that they have visibility just into that, that top level page that we created, which I believe was this page. So they wouldn't have access then to the contents of this lightning component, and you could set the lightning component up so that it filters and it doesn't even show up for them. Yeah, so this way you can kind of assign the views of grids based on your team functions. So say you have like sales team who needs some set of grids, marketing team who needs another set of grids, billing who needs another set. You kind of can break them up based on the Visualforce pages. And so because of that, so end users only actually need grids licenses. They don't need any Apsona licenses, but admins of grids will need both Apsona and grids licenses. And yeah, that's the basic stuff of what I wanted to cover. We can do some Q&A right now, I guess.
Okay, so there's a couple questions related to how many fields you can see, you can display on a grid. Like, is it limited, or is there a particular number of fields that you can include like in a row?
That's a good question. I've tried with like many more fields than this, but I don't know the exact number, but I can check, and I'll write that down and I can get back to you guys on the Trailblazer group.
Okay, great. Another question was, can you, when you change the width of one of the columns, does it save it, the next time you go in?
Yeah, so it actually does. And so what happens there is it saves it on like a per user basis. And so if I'm logged in as like a separate user and, I want to make, say, like this name or something longer, then it would save it like for that particular user. Yeah.
Another one's, does it work with Salesforce Classic?
So it should work with Salesforce Classic, although you won't have access to this related list grid. You would be able to use like standard Visualforce pages. So like this one, for example, If you just took this and put it into a tab, you should be able to do that in Classic as well. It's the same idea as regular Apsona itself is like a visual force page, and the same way this is a visual force page. So you should be able to do that.
Another person wanted to know if you'd be willing to show how the display works when there are more than a few records. They said, one of my least favorite things about Lightning is how the lists are presented.
Yeah, so let me see. I'm not sure if this exactly addresses what the person was asking, but for example, what it would look like, say with this all accounts, I took off this like filter of like active. Then if I reload it over here, so you'll see like 200 of them at a time, and then you can paginate through them. So this is not something that's configurable, the 200 limit right now, but you know, feel free to give us feedback if you think that is something that it should be. Yeah.
All right, there's just one more. Is it possible to show what default filters are showing on a grid? Also, how many fields can we add to the default filters?
So it's actually not possible to show the default filters. I'm not really sure, I guess, of the scenario where you would want that as opposed to using additional filters. So like, for example, in this case, or I mean, both of these are the same grid, but so say you just want to show opportunities here and you want people to know what filter it is, or in this case, this example, I would think what you would do is configure it as an additional filter so that they can choose to see it or not see it. The purpose of the default filter is more so that if you want to like hide specific data from people so that they just cannot access it, then you would use the default filter for that.
All right, great.
And then I think there is a second part of that question that I'm not sure if I answered. Maybe not. Okay. Cool. Yeah, sounds good. I think this is about all I had to show you guys. There are some more features that I haven't really covered here, but they're documented on the website. I wanted to kind of keep this as more of like an introduction to grids and keep it relatively simple and just kind of give you guys some ideas on how you can use it. So please try it out and let us know what your thoughts are. And yeah, thank you guys so much for coming today.
And then I have one more person that had a question about the recording afterwards. I'm trying to put that in the chat again. So,
oh yeah, so the recording should be sent out on our YouTube channel. I can just ping the link for our YouTube channel in the chat.
I think I got it. Sorry. Oh, we both did it.
Yeah, so we'll send this out on our YouTube channel. Is there a way to visualize the data in the grid? Not right now, there's not, but again, that's like a feature we could potentially add. If you send in an email to support@apsona.com, I'll just put that in the chat as well. Then that would be good so that we also know like what features you're looking for. If there's specific types of visualizations that you'd like, then yeah, that information would be great for us. So looks like we're good. So yeah, thank you guys again so much for coming, and feel free to send in any questions to support@apsona.com or to our Trailblazer link. And otherwise, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.